This will be a quick video to help you understand how to read and follow a written knitting pattern. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that there are different ways that knitting patterns can be represented. For example, shown here is a chart type of knitting pattern. Most chart types will resemble something like this, or you can have written knitting patterns and it'll look something like this. And in this video today, I'm going to be focusing on written patterns just because on my blog, the way that I share all my patterns is using a written pattern. The complexity and difficulty of a pattern can vary significantly depending on what project you're working on. Just to give you a general idea, here are some examples. Some patterns can look as simple as the following shown here, or a little bit more complex requiring a few more stitches, or they can have multiple instructions and a lot of things going on at once, such as the one shown below. So not all knitting patterns are structured the same way, but there are a few general components that the majority of knitting patterns have. Most knitting patterns will have material information at the beginning of the pattern, where they'll tell you what type of needles and the size of needles that are required, as well as what kind of yarn and how much yarn you'll need to complete the project. Then you'll see cast on instructions, where you'll find instructions on how many stitches you need to cast on to get the project started. Next, you'll find row stitch information, where it'll tell you what stitches are required in each row of the project. Anything you see between the asterisks indicates that those particular stitches should be repeated until the end of the row. And if you see anything in the parentheses, that also indicates that those stitches in the parentheses should be repeated. If there's a number following the parentheses, that indicates that those stitches in the parentheses should be repeated that many times in the row. Now let's just go through this one pattern together just to get a better understanding of how to read a pattern. So you see up here I have listed materials I used in this knitting project. You need US size 13 needles, and for the yarn I indicated that you can use any yarn that recommends US size 13 needles. Next you'll see cast on instructions, and here I say cast on 16 stitches. So all you do is cast on 16 stitches. And then after that, you see information regarding what type of stitches you need to do for each row. So in row 1, you would purl all the way until you complete the row. And then in row 2, you would knit 2 stitches, purl 2 stitches, and repeat this pattern until the end of the row. And then for row 3, you would knit 2 stitches, purl 2 stitches, and keep repeating this pattern until the end of the row. And for row 4, you would purl all the way until the end of the row. And then you see there underneath it says repeat rows 1 through 4 until desired length. So you would keep repeating rows 1 through 4 at that pattern until you get the desired length of the scarf. So just as a side note, some patterns may include a section that explains abbreviations that were used in the pattern. This is very helpful, but unfortunately not all patterns include this section. If you ever come across an abbreviation that you don't understand, you can always Google it, and there's also a number of great sites that have knitting stitches abbreviations with explanations on how to complete those stitches, and I'll put some of the links in the info box below, so please be sure to check that out. Now this video was just a basic overview of how to read a simple knitting pattern. Of course, you may run into some bumps here and there, but feel free to contact me and I'll try to help you with anything to the best of my ability. You can contact me via Twitter or leave a comment here, and I'll try to get back to you as soon as possible. So thanks so much for watching and happy knitting!